Hi, have you ever wanted to send a bang over Bluetooth Midi to max MSP? I did. Let's see how I did it. In this experiment, I'm going to show you how you can make a circuit board with an Arduino sketch and a Fritz diagram of the circuit. And using max MSP, we're going to be able to connect to it and send MIDI commands to max. First, I had to get a breadboard and a Nano BLE33. And then I had to consult some documentation. Once I wired it, I wired a button right here. I had a max patch that I built. First, let's take a look at the max patch, which is receiving over MIDI Bluetooth. I load message 3 so that I can get the menu to pick the correct MIDI Bluetooth service when I launch the project. Then I'm looking at the third output of the MIDI parse object, which is sending control change information. I see that they're coming right now as 1, 0. I unpack it and try to trap for 127. When I press the button on the breadboard, I get a 127, and hence I get a bang. Let's look at the Arduino code that makes that possible. Okay, here's the Arduino code. Include a library here, the Arduino BLE library. I set up a byte array to hold the control change messages over MIDI. I set my button pin that I'm connected to on the breadboard. I initialized the first button state to low and then the previous button state to high. And I defined a couple of service UUIDs so that it shows up properly. They were connected in the Bluetooth configuration over audio MIDI setup on the Mac. And then I set up the services and the characteristics here. We start out with a delay because the circuit I found, if I don't put the delay in the beginning, sometimes I don't get a good serial connection. And I don't see anything in the serial. We're monitoring the serial over right now, 9600. And if I press the button, you'll see I'm sending MIDI control messages, 127. Every time I press the button, I send a MIDI control message. That's why when it's connected to max, I get a bang after the MIDI control message comes through. Here's the Fritz diagram to show the connections. There's the Fritz diagram, it's included. Pretty simple circuit. Notice I have a MIDI DIN plug, but I'm not using it in this particular experiment because I'm sending the MIDI commands over Bluetooth. But if you want, you can connect your MIDI keyboard to that MIDI DIN plug and control it. This board can be powered up anywhere with a battery or plugged into the wall socket. It sends commands wirelessly over Bluetooth. Nice. So if you wanted to connect something like this, this is an intervalometer. You can set that as an input to the whole system. Because it's an outside device, you can program it separately, and the board still sends all the MIDI commands correctly. So this would be useful for doing conducting, broadcasting with cues, choreography. And in fact, I'm going to put 2 intervalometers into this breadboard to make this happen. I have one right now. It's sending commands into the board. All this is available, this fritzing diagram, the max patch, and the Arduino are all available on the our Patreon page. A couple of things I wanted to show you about the Arduino Nano sketch that I have in here. You do have to run this advertising loop here. You have to run this because I found that if I shut off the IDE, all of a sudden the connections started dropping. So this will make sure that it's not dependent on the IDE being open to keep the connection up. You're advertising the connection. If you're connected, you can do this stuff, okay? And if your button state was low in the past and then high now, you can say button pressed and you can send the MIDI control change. The send MIDI control change does a little setup, but the meat of the thing is here, MIDI command, and that function is here. It just sets up a byte array that goes out to the value inside the MIDI characteristic. This is the way you send it to the MIDI service. Then that gets processed as a MIDI command over Bluetooth MIDI. Thank you for watching. I appreciate. Enjoy your day. Please support us on Patreon. And if you can, visit us on mazelmusicalarts.org. We're making musical instruments here, little circuit boards that help musicians play, write, and conduct music. Thank you again.